I stumbled upon 8 true Craigslist horror stories, and one invisible buyer followed me home. I never should have opened that door. It creaked as I pushed it, each sound echoing in the silence of my apartment. The chill hit me first, the kind that prickled my skin, raising every hair on my arms. I was just a regular guy, scrolling through Craigslist, looking for vintage furniture for my sparse living room. Just a few clicks and I'd stumble into someone else's unwanted treasures. But that day I found something else. I had to know, didn't I? The post was innocuous enough at first glance. A well-worn chair, slightly tattered. But just below the image, I saw something shifted in the text. A disjointed sentence that made my stomach twist. Invisible buyer interested. I felt the air change around me. It grew thick, almost suffocating. The whispers of my own imagination taunted me. A shiver crawled down my spine as shadows danced through the corners of the room. A quick glance out the window revealed a gray sky, heavy with clouds threatening to spill their contents any moment. I should run. Instead, I clicked on the post. My heart raced. Strange noises grew louder around me, a rustling from the kitchen that shouldn't have been there. I was alone. The walls felt like they were closing in. I could almost hear their breath, chilling and unsettling, as if someone was lurking just beyond the edge of perception. I figured it was just drafts, or maybe my mind playing tricks, spurred on by horror movies I watched too late at night. But the hairs on my neck stood at attention when I saw it. A shadow moved in the corner. A flicker zipped past the hallway. Panic gripped my chest. I bolted back to the post, my fingers trembling, clicking on every link like a madman. What was the story behind this? Did others see it too? The room grew colder, the air electric with dread. I heard the faint sound of breathing, too soft to place. Was it mine, quick and shallow, or was something next to me? I glanced behind. The hallway was empty, but the whispering grew louder. I swore I could feel it creeping in, an invisible presence in the room. I swallowed hard as I returned my attention to the screen. The seller had posted some odd conditions: meeting arrangements at midnight, location undisclosed. My stomach churned. The weight of unseen eyes bore down on me, tightening my throat. And then it happened. The lights flickered, and for just a second, I saw a figure lingering at the end of the hallway. My breath caught. The moment froze, terror like ice in my veins. I opened my mouth to scream, but it was swallowed by the darkness as the door swung shut behind me with a resounding bang. Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon, and while you're there, smash that like button. It really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. The darkness didn't just close in. It folded over me like a thick shroud, suppressing all senses: sight, sound. Even the pulse of my own heartbeat seemed muted. I felt the cold seeping through my skin, sinking deep into my bones, making every inch of me ache. I wanted to bolt for the door, but it was as if the walls themselves had conspired to lock me inside. Every noise amplified by the silence pressed against my ears. Breathe, I whispered to myself, forcing a level of calm I didn't feel. Just breathe. But my breaths came out ragged and panicked, a mere echo of composure. I edged toward the light switch, half expecting to feel a hand wrap around my wrist, to be pulled back into the depths of the darkness. As I reached, the lights flickered again, and I caught a glimpse of nothing but a shift in the air, a blurring of the shadows that defied existence. I stumbled back, nearly colliding with the couch, staring at the hallway, where moments ago I had seen the figure. The faintest sound echoed around me, like the scuttling of tiny feet, a sickening scratch against the hardwood. My mind raced through every horror tale I had ever heard, each thought dark and consuming. I was far from an ideal protagonist in this twisted narrative, but I was trapped in the role nonetheless. No, I chanted, it's just the wind. But with each repetition, The words felt flimsier, more desperate. Just then, my phone buzzed violently on the table, stopping me in my tracks. I glanced down to the screen, the light illuminating something urgent. A notification from the Craigslist app. My heart lurched that I hesitated before tapping it open, dread trickling down my spine like ice water. The message was from the seller, a single line written in jagged, erratic script. Don't lose the chair. At that moment, the air shifted again, thickening, twisting with emotions I couldn't name: anger, fear, something far more primal. I whipped my head toward the hallway, making out a shape lingering at the periphery of sight, a dark silhouette that pulsed like a heartbeat. Chills cascaded across my skin. Leave me alone, I yelled, my voice breaking the suffocating quiet. The figure didn't move. It simply watched, unblinking, waiting for something, perhaps my will to shatter. Crippling fear clawed its way through me. I had to escape, but my feet felt glued to the floor, every instinct screaming to run. I took a shuddering breath, and in that moment, the power went out completely, plunging me into inky blackness. The world outside my window had darkened too. The storm that had brewed above finally unleashed its torrent in pitch blackness. I heard it, a voice, low and trembling, almost like a childish whisper, "Don't let it take you." The urgency in the tone sent a wave of icy terror rolling through me. "Who's there?" I croaked, my voice cracking with fear. No response came, but a crushing pressure built in the room, as if the very air conspired against me. I realized then it was not just an invisible buyer I had brought home. It was something insidious, something feeding off my dread. Frantically, I reached for the light switch, but the darkness swallowed everything before me. A maelstrom of shadows dancing along the walls. My fingers grazed the edge of the table, searching for anything that could be a weapon, but the weight of existence began to press down, a suffocating entity, and then I heard it, just behind me, a low, guttural growl rumbling in the throat of the unseen. My heart thundered wildly. I spun around, lost in a nightmare where the tangible met the parallel realm of the unholy. "Stop!" I screamed, but in my panic, I knocked over a lamp. The crash echoed loud in the dense silence, and as I bent to pick it up, a hand brushed my shoulder, ice cold and insistent. In that instance, the whispers escalated into a cacophony, desperate, pleading, and hungry. I felt something encircle my throat, tightening like a noose, pulling me toward a chasm where light no longer existed. I fought against it, clawing at my skin, gasping for breath as I stumbled backward, and in the eerie silence that followed, I realized I had lost my grip on reality altogether. The shadows were no longer just dark. They were alive, and they were coming for me. Then, suddenly, the whispering stopped, and the breath against my ear turned warm, almost inviting. "It's time," it said softly, and as dread engulfed me, I turned to see the figure now fully formed behind me, its face mere inches from mine. With a gut-wrenching scream that echoed in the emptiness, I was about to learn what it truly meant to be taken. The last thing I saw before my world collapsed was its mouth stretching into a horrific smile, teeth glistening in the dark, and the word chair whispering like a promise. The sudden brightness seemed a betrayal after the oppressive darkness, yet it flooded the room with an unforgiving clarity. I blinked against the harsh light, trying to shake the remnants of dread clinging to me like spider silk. The horrors mere seconds before felt like fading echoes of a twisted sunset, retreating behind the facade of normalcy. But normalcy was a cruel joke spiraling out of control that I turned to face the figure who had unervingly melted away, expecting to see some grotesque visage lingering. But there was nothing, just the faint hum of electronics awakening back to life, a status quo I thought I could handle. Now, however, the emptiness felt more confining than the suffocating dark. The chair, a reminder of the twisted bargain ID made, loomed ominously in the corner. It felt as if it held its breath, waiting for me to make any move, to break the stillness. Unable to tear my gaze away, I approached it hesitantly. Grooves and carvings, once indistinct in the darkness, now shimmered with grim clarity. Symbols that hinted at an unsettling lore, whispers of curses bound by wood and spirit. As I reached out to touch the armrest, A tremor rippled through the wood, an unsettling shiver that reverberated deep within me as if the chair was alive. My fingers recoiled momentarily, but curiosity rooted my feet to the spot. The surface was cold, unnaturally so, like ice in a frozen hell. The moment I made contact, images flooded my mind. Visions of shadows darting through a misty landscape, hollowed screams reverberating as ghosts tangled with the light. I was not alone. They were here, trapped within the contours of the chair. The realization crashed over me, and panic surged through my veins like venom. I stepped back, but the chair seemed to beckon, a siren luring me closer, whispering dark promises of enlightenment, or was it madness? The air rippled again, a magnetic pull intensifying around me as I stumbled. It was then, in that precarious moment, I felt eyes watching not just from the corners of the room, but from deep within the chair itself. I slowly turned to face it again, this time with dread curling my stomach tightly. "Let me go," I muttered, feeling painfully vulnerable, as if I had emerged from the depths of something heavy and dank and unspeakable. Yet, the unearthly stillness responded with a slow creak, as if the chair was toying with my small resolve. From behind me came a laugh, low and resonant, dripping with malice. I spun around, dread pooling and solidifying within me as I saw nothing. But that laugh lingered, a specter dancing just out of sight. It cut the silence mercilessly, beckoning shadows dancing in its wake. "It's more than just a chair, dear." The voice pierced through the air, slithering into my mind like poison. "You wanted it, now you must understand it." Heart racing, I felt an unseen force gripping my collar, yanking me closer to the chair, my own resistance becoming futile. "Stop," I gasped, clawing at air as I was drawn toward the glinting surfaces once alluring, now grotesque. The voice continued, relentless. "They are waiting for you to join them. So many already here, just longing for company." And then, as my body lost its fight, they emerged. Shadows coalescing, ghostly figures woven from despair and anguish, their hollow eyes fixated on me. I staggered back, feeling the dread surging like waves crashing against a solitary rock. Each apparition displayed a horror and unfinished tale, a letter unsent, cries condemned to the void. One specter detached from the wall of terror, stepping closer, its mouth forming a wordless scream. The air turned palpably thick around us, its presence nearly tangible, a weight of betrayal woven into its being. "Join us," it mouthed, shards of rage and heartache culminating in its gaze, twisting reality into something I struggled to understand. Every breath was a scream, every heartbeat, a call to the void. The chair behind me pulsated with the resonance of helplessness, an open door into endless suffering. Suddenly, a furious wind howled through the apartment, extinguishing the light and throwing me into darkness once more. As the shadows writhed, I stumbled, hearing whispered promises and wild laughter coalesce like a storm around me. "Save yourself," a voice hissed, clawing through the cacophony. Then came the chair's familiar whisper, impossibly close, as if the walls themselves shuddered with anticipation. "You can't escape me, my dear." In the throes of suffocating panic, I grasped for the wall, any sense of direction, but even as I stumbled forward, I realized the pull had shifted. The darkness became a breathing entity, a thrumming heartbeat that came not just from the absence of light, but from everything I was trying so desperately to flee. Right as I reached for a door, it swung open, revealing an abyss dressed in midnight and shadows. I was drawn toward it, unable to resist as hands grasped at the edges of my very essence, urging me into an all-consuming darkness. "Breathe," I heard a voice whisper again. But this time, it wasn't mine. Just as I felt fingers wrap tightly around my arm, anchoring me in place, the door swung wider, inviting me to take that final step inward. And that was when I realized that it was not just me who might be taken. I stumbled into the doorway, the relentless pull of the dark pressing against me like the crushing weight of the ocean. My heart thundered in my chest, an alarm bell blaring as I gasped, drowning in the encroaching blackness. Behind me, the laughter played like a haunting melody, winding its way around my psyche, devouring my will to escape. Just a second longer, I thought as I fought against the clammy fingers wrapping tightly around my waist, threatening to yank me further into the abyss. But every desperate impulse drew me into their thrall instead, the invisible arms holding me firmly in place. And then there was silence, sudden, suffocating. The wind ceased its wail, and no more whispers twisted in the air. It hung heavy like a tangible cloak. I dared a glance back toward the flickering chair that had held my fate moments earlier. But instead of any semblance of safety, it now appeared as a threshold to madness, grotesque shadows writhing upon its surface, forming words I could not comprehend. "Embrace us," the disembodied voice slithered through the darkness, licking at my skin like the chill of a forgotten grave. "You're already ours." Panic clawed anew at my throat, and instinct kicked in. I jerked away from the unseen grip, twisting to make sense of my surroundings. But the world had morphed. The walls that confined me began to pulse softly, as if breathing, as if alive. They teemed with anguish, the echoes of ghostly moans filtering through the air like a long-lost memory yearning to be unearthed. Were the walls closing in? I felt their vastness contract, an all-consuming maw set to swallow me whole. I turned desperately, retracing my steps toward the door, aching for the promise of escape. My fingers grazed the cool metal of the knob, twisting it fiercely, but it remained steadfast, resistant like a sentient entity mocking my despair. "Unlock the truth," the voice teased, an eroding cadence that made my bones rattle. "You must delve deeper." No, this wasn't just a battle of wills. It was manipulation, cruel and calculated. I thought of the chair, with its mundane presence that had turned hellish, and shuddered. Whatever force possessed this place entwined itself with memories too fragile to touch. They emerged, then coiled back into the layers of time, screaming their pain, each echo a shard of me I couldn't reclaim. Through the silence, the shadows amassed, a swirling tempest at the edges of my vision. I dared not look directly at them, fearing their energies might congeal into something tangible, something that would suck me into their world for all eternity. Instead, I focused inward, desperately evoking a flicker of hope, the possibility of escape still pulsating within me. "Show me," I cried into the void as if defiance could banish the whispers that echoed through my ribcage. "What do you want?" The air suddenly thickened, crackling with a raw energy that sizzled at the edges of my sanity. Then, without warning, the walls exhaled a rushing wind that blew through the apartment like a storm. It uprooted everything familiar, scattering echoes of forgotten laughter and whispers of slain dreams into the air like scattered leaves. My breath came in rapid gasps, a desperate cry for release, a plea drowned beneath the might of the storm. "Make a choice," the voice reverberated, blending with the chaos. From within the churning maelstrom, I saw them, ghostly silhouettes weaving through the shadows, each one stretched taut, circling towards a dimming light. Their faces bore expressions of devastation, lineless mouths begging for dreams lost like ash in the wind. "Join us," they urged, their presence exuding an allure, like moths drawn to a flickering flame, all while I teetered on the threshold of my undoing. Then clarity struck, sharp and poignant, as I remembered the stories that had stitched together this tapestry of torment. I had come seeking the bizarre tales of Craigslist, dark voices woven into warnings for the unwary. How had I unwittingly traded my own tale for theirs? The energy morphed into a sudden tautness, as if the fabric of reality was rigged tight. I gasped as blinding light burst from the very heart of the storm, illuminating every thin figure flitting through the chaos, unveiling their set expressions of longing and despair. And then I was moving, propelled against my will. "Leave!" I screamed at the gathering tempest, suddenly aware of the energy gripping me, dragging me toward the light, promising terrifying truths I had no strength to confront. But just as I entered that luminescence, a blinding certainty that this was the ominous truth, the shadows surged, hefting their weight against me. As I grasped for freedom, I felt a hand slip into mine, not tender or warm, but cold as ice, gripping tighter than despair itself. "It's time to choose," the whispers echoed faintly, laced with familiarity. "You're one of us now." And as the shadows collided with the light, That hand planted a seed of dread deep inside me, igniting a panic that surged like wildfire. I turned my head, horrified to see a ghostly figure rising at the edge of the light, its eyes filled with knowledge, the invisible buyer, the very substance of my nightmares, woven into more than just the darkness I had fled. "Your journey is far from over," it whispered, its voice crackling like flames consuming wood. "And what's hidden beneath the layers of your own truth will be far darker than you can imagine." And at that moment reality warped again. As the luminous world began to fold in upon itself, fear clawed up my throat, and a sense of something immeasurably larger than me unfolded within the shadows, beckoning me to venture deeper into the horror. With a final lurch, the light extinguished. I could only hear the echoes of my own screams dissipating, flung into an oblivion where the true nightmare was just beginning to unfurl. I stood in the oppressive darkness, a vacuum swallowing any remnants of hope that had battled for my survival. The weight of what I had witnessed pressed down upon me, ghostly visages, haunting whispers, and horrific truths lurking within the shadows. I could hardly tell if I was still in the realm of the living or had already slipped into a nightmare more real than any I had ever encountered. An uneasy stillness draped itself over the room, the kind that feels pregnant with foreboding and dread. The candle's flickering flame, once my beacon of fragile solace, now sputtered in terror as if frightened by the unseen presence that claimed dominion here. Shadows shifted subtly, bending and intertwining as if in communion, their breath hot against my skin like specters anticipating a feast. The low hum began to resonate in the air, a sinister melody composed of despair, evoking what felt like the very rhythm of the place, the heartbeat of a dwelling steeped in an infinite loop of sorrows unseen. As I strained to listen, I sensed it. The echoes of the past crackling in the silence, an orchestra of tortured souls summoning me deeper, beckoning me to join their fray. With each passing heartbeat, a flicker of recognition stirred within me, fragments of imprisoned souls longing for release, each one capable of more malevolence than anything I had previously imagined. A chill spiraled down my spine, woven from memories and stories and lives once lived, each resonance unearthing the darkest layers buried beneath the floorboards of this accursed abode. "Join us," the disembodied voices purred, almost in unison. "Remember." I squeezed my eyes shut, fighting against the temptation to listen. The air shimmered, distorting reality as the past cracked open around me like a ghastly egg. Shapes coalesced, horrifying flashbacks materializing in garbled fragments, a child's laughter echoing through the halls, a woman's weeping, the sudden shattering of glass, each sound pouring into my ears and filling the folds of my mind. Disoriented, I stumbled backward, colliding with something solid, yet also ethereal. "Back to the beginning, are we?" A low voice crooned, overflowing with malevolence. It was neither here nor there, earthy nor ghostly, but a synthesis of both. "You can't escape what you've awakened," I gasped, sensing the presence behind me, a twisted figure, all angles and shadows, looming just outside the fringes of the light. My skin prickled. I felt its gaze piercing through the veil of my being, feeding off my terror. I turned slowly, the very air around me thickening like molasses, each movement a trial against the unseen weight urging me back into the abyss. A face materialized in the gloom, a woman twisted in agony, her mouth stretched wide in a silent scream that echoed painfully in my mind. I recoiled, wavering on the precipice of awareness, freezing in the juxtaposition of her anguish and the muffled whispers coaxing me to understand. "Your tale is etched in blood," she rasped, her empty eyes burrowing into mine. "The stories you took, they choose their vessels." My heart raced, pounding against my ribs like a bird trapped within a cage. The truth clawed insistently at my thoughts, the Craigslist posts, the whispered stories that promised danger and horror, all the while leading me here. An involuntary shiver shot through my body as pieces fell together. The victims, the sightings, the chilling threads connecting them through invisible strings of fate. "Bound to darkness," the woman hissed, circling closer, her form distorting into countless fragments flitting like moths in the void. "They were all meant to cross paths with you." Instant rebuke surged within me. I was no one's vessel. I had only been seeking intrigue, a thrill at the edge of madness, a tickle of terror at my fingertips. "They are never satisfied," she uttered with rasping sorrow, the vibrations shaking the very air. "They feed upon your fear, waiting for us to converge." The flickering flame danced dangerously, a last stand holding back the encroaching horror. I felt a tearing in my core as something tightened around my heart, a tether to its depths, dragging me closer to the pulsating shadows and unyielding dark. Time tangled up beneath the weight of their desires, twisting me further into their grisly embrace. And then, a roar erupted from the depths of the void, an echo that felt rich with malice and triumph. My body betrayed me as visions of more terrors erupted like shards propelled through glass rooms filled with horrors that resided comfortably in my mind as stories untold but simmering beneath the surface, each one now seeking release. "Open your heart," the shadows chanted, the resonance filling the space like a malevolent wind. "Become part of the story." I staggered, retching as dread clawed its way up. My mind raced, but as I fought against the crushing grip of shadows, there was a flash, a momentary flicker of silvered light against the chaos. Eyes wide with horror, I saw them, those who had faded before me. Battered, broken, and twisted like the very fabric of this place, the ones trapped in their own stories, lost threads yearning to reclaim their narrative. Suddenly, the shadows lunged, a cacophony of noise erupting, visions collapsing inward, wrapping around me with an insatiable hunger. Desperation surged through my veins. I had to flee, had to break free. I turned to run, but as I did, the very walls of the room seemed to bleed shadows, alive with eyes that observed with insidious glee. A piercing scream resonated through the air, weaving through the ether a familiar voice that drove my heart into icy terror. "Help me!" The plea shattered the air, freezing me in place. It was my sister's voice, and in that moment of hesitation, when I looked back in fear, I saw her face pressed against the fluidity of the darkness, her eyes wide and pleading, glowing softly like a distant star. But it was unmistakable. The unseen buyer had no intention of letting either of us go. "Choose," the shadows sang, their voices now a resounding chorus of finality. "The time has come to weave the next path into this dark tapestry." The shadows chanted, their discordant symphony wrapping around me like a serpent ready to constrict. "Choose," they echoed, each syllable resonating with an energy that thrummed through the very walls of this accursed space. My heart raced, caught in a whirlwind of panic and confusion as my sister's helpless gaze bore into me. "Run," I shouted, fatally aware of the spectral tendrils grasping at her form. "Get out of here." But the air curled heavy around her, lingering like a fog that obscured both her escape and my reason. "Help me," she cried again, her voice cracking, a haunting melody tugging at the strings of my heart. She was still alive yet tethered to the shadow realm, caught in a liminal space between existence and oblivion. The realization gripped me like icy fingers tracing my spine. Each moment was a countdown, tightening the noose around both our lives. The echoes of the shadows morphed into an agonized wail, resonating with memories both chilling and bittersweet. Images of our childhood flashed like lightning, laughter ringing through sunlit days, whispers beneath moonlit nights. But those joyous moments turned grotesque as my memories curled back on themselves, swallowed by darkness. "Help me," it echoed again, but this time it felt different, no longer a plea but a hollow incantation. The weight of her desperation pressed deeper into my veins, coaxing dormant fears into a frenzy. The shadows shifted, swirling in chaotic patterns, their endless hunger palpable, hungry for a vessel to harbor. Perhaps they wished for her to become one of them, adrift in an immortal cycle of sorrow. "No," I shouted, my voice reverberating against the walls that were now closing in like a maw eager to ingest. I felt visceral fury rise, that divine spark stirring within me, igniting defiance in the face of dread. "I will not." Suddenly, the walls heaved, pulsating as if the structure itself were alive, a monstrous heart beneath rotting floors. Desperate whispers spiraled around me, urging surrender, promising clarity if I would only succumb. But all I could think was how my sister needed me, her life tethered to my resolve. The shadows formed letters in the air, words curling like smoke: kill, escape, join. I gasped, recoiling, and in that momentary distraction, the darkness surged forward, unspooling and wrapping around my ankles like frigid tendrils, yanking me backward into its suffocating embrace. No, I choose her. The statement burst from my lips like a firework shattering the night, a primal roar that shattered the hold the shadows held on me. My hands clawed at the ground, fingers digging into the fibers of reality, pulling me toward my sister. Her expression transformed from despair to fleeting surprise, her spirit flickering like a dying ember. "All stories end," she screeched, her voice distorting into something twisted, half familiar, half strange. The shadows drew taut, and I sensed the terrible hunger morphing into something akin to rage and abomination fueled by our struggle. "Join us," they bellowed, their chorus a crescendo vibrating through the very marrow of my bones. My mind flared with horror as I felt a searing pain lance through my chest, a pulse of darkness breeding deeper shadows within me, seeking to corrupt. With one final push, I lunged forward, grasping onto the last flicker of her warmth. I clasped her wrist, fingers entwined in desperation, but a wave of dark force surged, wrenching her away. My heart sank as I wrestled against the pull, torn between my love for her and the primal instinct to survive. "Choose!" The shadows roared in unison, shaking the walls free of silence. Time twisted, warping into a grotesque mockery of reality, as I felt the world around me flickering like an undulating flame. Her face shimmered with fear, twisting into reflections of different futures, each one darker than the last. And then I understood. This haunted abode had chosen me. It was my tale, the one where choices rippled, altering destinies and deepening the horror. I who had sought thrill without considering the price had become entwined in a narrative not of my own making. The hushed whispers of the forsaken now surrounded me, waiting for their next victim, their next story to tell. And inevitably, I could hear them all. "Become like us." I wrenched myself away, driving my legs forward with sheer will, the world a chaotic blur as I sprinted back through the minutes that stretched and yawned like a bottomless pit. My sister's cries slowly faded into hollow echoes, but it was a mistake hope fed upon despair. It clawed back from the shadows, whispering what I could no longer ignore, the inescapable truth. I felt it, a tingling at my fingertips, as if threads of ghostly energy intertwined with my very being, beckoning me to remain. But before reason led me back to the horror, I crashed through the doorway and stumbled into the corridor, gasping for breath. Just as I turned to make one last look, shadows spilled out of the walls and coalesced an avalanche of reaching limbs ready to claim me in their cold, wet embrace. I met my sister's gaze one final time, but all that quenched the light between us was betrayal. "You chose this," she hissed, her voice warping into the shadows, sinister and seductive. "No," I screamed, but my voice was swallowed into the vortex of terror. And then she smiled, an eerie, hollow mimicry of the love we shared. The floor beneath me shuddered, and with a deafening rush, the abyss yawned wide open, the shadows screaming as time expanded, stretching into a realm of nothingness as I felt myself falling into darkness, suspended in a chilling embrace. Then everything went still, and a voice, neither mine nor hers, echoed in the silence. Now the story truly begins. The crushing silence lingered like a suffocating fog, thick with despair as I drifted in that dark void, suspended between oblivion and reality. Panic surged through my veins, clawing at the edges of my consciousness, dragging me deeper into the shadows. My fingers twitched, searching for anything solid amid the infinite black, but nothing materialized. Then came the whispers, soft and seductive, slithering through the shroud of darkness, coaxing me to surrender to their chilling lullaby. "Welcome home," they intoned, a chorus of forgotten souls stitched together by agony. The once familiar cadence of my sister's voice surfaced briefly, taunting me as it intertwined with the inhumane choruses of the damned. "You wanted to know the truth." But the truth tasted like ash in my mouth, and I recoiled from its bitterness. I wrestled against the engulfing darkness, a primal instinct urging me to fight. Yet I felt the isolation creeping in a magnetizing pull, urging me to yield to the weight of despair that seemed to cradle me. "Choose," a voice echoed, abrupt and jagged, sending tremors throughout my fading psyche. Was it the shadows speaking, or had it become part of my own fragmented mind? I grappled with my thoughts, battling them like they were living entities. Each breath was shallow, the air thick with an overpowering dread that constricted my throat. Fragments of memories began to float toward me, vivid flashes of happiness entwined with horror. A birthday cake, wildflowers in the field, laughter dulled by the specter of tragedy, my sister's laughter. How could it have come to this? The vivid memories twisted, morphing into grotesque parodies of the past, darkening until the laughter crescendoed into wails of anguish that echoed in the void, rippling the fabric of nothingness with newfound determination. I focused on the tether of her spirit, a faint flicker of light in the relentless darkness. I won't abandon you, I screamed into the suffocating blackness. I will find you. I will. Suddenly, the echoes shifted. Molding a new form, a silhouette emerged from within the shadows, captivating yet horrifying. It loomed, a figure shrouded in obsidian, eyes glinting like shards of broken glass. Each step it took echoed, a methodical rhythm that rattled my already frayed nerves. It beckoned me with a chilling, elongated finger, the very embodiment of my nightmares. Come closer. See what you've awakened. It whispered, each word enveloping me like frigid water, seeping into the cores of my bones. As I stumbled forward, drawn towards the specter, the darkness coalesced around me, revealing shapes twisted, anguished faces, each one drenched in despair, their mouths agape in silent screams. This was what the shadows hunted. This was what they craved, my fear, my pain. They fed on my memories, morphing them as I stood there, paralyzed, straddling the thin line between fear and fascination. Join us, the figure murmured, mouth curling into a grin that suggested familiarity, yet was deeply unsettling. You are one of us now. You tread the path of the forsaken. I started to shake my head in denial, but the shadows lunged, intertwining with my essence, wrapping around me like cumbersome chains. Every pulse of darkness connected me to the figure, an energetic spillover, feeding off my dread. I felt it, memories colliding, shifting through timelines that were not my own, a rush of lives lived and lost in darkness. I glimpsed faces, namelessly familiar, their stories interwoven with mine, tainted by greed and cruelty. Eternal cycles, the figure hissed. Await those unprepared to embrace the story. You can't escape it. Tendrils of shadows gripped tighter, slithering across my skin like scorched earth seeping into fresh wounds. I trembled, cringing away in disgust, and yet part of me longed to know the end of this tale. What are you? I gasped, my bravado fading as uncertainty gnawed at my resolve. I am what you seek and what you fear intertwined, the figure replied, the voice no longer echoing through the dark, but resonating deeply within my mind, a cacophony of understanding and despair. Threads of my own darkness itched at the edges of my sanity, unraveling truth and tainting hope. This is where stories end and new ones unearth. Desperation reared its head. My sister, and with a sudden, bone-aching pang, the world shifted, folding in on itself. The figure blurred, and in the distance, a haunting melody caught my attention, the voice of my sister, ethereal yet distorted, sweet yet dire. Help me, she sang, a ghostly lullaby tethered to an emotion I couldn't quite identify, a deeper longing. Your choice will set us free, the figure whispered, and with a snap, I found myself back at the threshold of the dark passage, a single door creaking open, revealing the flicker of light behind it, the sweet scent of pine and earth dancing into the oppressive gloom. I stood frozen, teetering on the brink of a choice too weighty to bear. Go back and join her, the shadows urged, every fiber of my being alight with their siren song. Or embrace the dark. With that, I felt the floor tremble beneath me once more. But this time it was not oppressive, it was an invitation. The ground cracked, something fragile yet powerful growing from its depths, the pale glimmer of possibility beckoning me forward. And just as I mustered the will to move, a piercing scream shattered the moment, the sound wrenching my heart, sending shards of despair coursing through my very soul. Run! A voice ripped through the dim, but it came not from my sister, not from the figure before me, but from deep within the shadows, and time stopped at I in the silence that followed. My choice loomed like a specter. A savage hunger for resolution pulled me one way, while the cacophony behind me urged another. Before I could decide, the door slammed shut, sealing my fate in a whirlwind of shadows and screams. In that instant of paralyzing dread, a crack spread across the walls, revealing darkened figures lurking just beyond. Their waiting forms hungry for my next move, and the suffocating tension. The figure grinned wider, as the shadows dripped with anticipation. Now the true horror begins. The odor of decay clawed at my senses as the shadows writhed around me, alive and hungry. The once familiar space twisted into a treacherous labyrinth. The dim flicker of the light behind the door fading into an almost mocking semblance of warmth. It now felt like a distant sun casting its last ray before being consumed by night. "Find her," the figure hissed, its voice escaping in treacherous whispers as if vibrating through the very air itself. "Your sister is waiting." With an involuntary gasp, I took a step back, my heart racing, desperately grappling for clarity in the chaos. But the ground was now tilting beneath me, shifting without warning, insensible agony threatening to unravel my resolve. The familiar melody of my sister's voice seemed to weave through the very structure of the shadows, tantalizing yet tormenting, pulling me ever deeper into the abyss. "Help me!" It echoed again, but now layered with an urgency that lanced through my core. "Help us!" Just as I began to slip further into despair, the crack in the walls widened, spewing forth tendrils of darkness that danced before me, drawing me with a persistent tug. It was almost as if they were alive, each curling strand whispering ancient secrets, tantalizing truths that echoed through the long-forgotten chambers of my haunted memory. "Don't run from what you are," the figure urged, its smile growing wider, teeth glistening like knives. I could sense the shadows brewing behind me, their hunger morphing into something palpable as panic coursed through my veins. "You belong to the darkness just as she does." My vision blurred, and I could feel the shadow's cold fingers grazing my skin in a maddening caress, trying to meld with my essence. I stumbled back, gasping for air as the tendrils pulsed closest, their whispers insistent, growing louder. "Your pain is our feast." "No!" I screamed, the words splitting from my throat with sheer desperation. In the depths, I clutched the fragments of defiance, my sister's voice now entangled with the cries of torment around me. "I won't let you take me." Suddenly, the world around me shuddered violently, a visceral quake that threatened to tear the fabric of time itself. The shadows shrieked, recoiling as a ripple tore through the scene, leaving only the echo of my heartbeat in the eerie silence. That was when I heard it, clearer than ever, the plea from beyond. The cacophony of whispers crescendoed, merging into a singular, desperate cry. "Find me!" It was my sister, her voice rising above the din of the lost souls. But where was it coming from? Why couldn't I see her? As if in answer, the walls around me trembled once more, and glowing sigils, pulsating with a sickly green light, began to emerge from the cracks. They shimmered like the surface of a still pond disturbed by unseen forces, their ancient language curling around me like smoke. "Fool!" the figure spat, the grin faltering as an air of fury pervaded the shadows. "You tread on sacred ground. Do not seek that which already belongs to us. Your sister," it continued, pressing forward until I could feel the chill emanating from its being, "is closer than you think. Embrace the dark, your choice carries weight. My dear." The sigils flickered, revealing fragmented images, brief glimpses of moments long lost. My sister's bright smile caught in fleeting flashes, the joy of youth tainted by a black horizon creeping ever closer, an all-consuming void. But the more I observed, the more I strained to reach out for her. The darker the visions became, shifting paradoxically into horror, a gruesome tableau of sacrifices and laughter, the anguished cries of the forgotten entwined with the echoes of our lives. I began to see faces submerged in the shadows, eyes wide with the same despair I felt. She was trapped, lost within these memories, a prisoner of our anguish and their eternal hunger. The walls pulsed violently, and shadows morphed into grotesque shapes, their limbs twitching in anticipation. They fed off the fear I desperately tried to conceal, growing more corporeal, shifting their forms. The darkness seemed to possess a will of its own, gleeful in its pursuit. Choose, they urged, their voices overlapping, a multitude of wretched desires rising in a chaotic harmonization. Suddenly, a doorway loomed in the thickness, the very door I had almost crossed into moments before. It swung open, revealing a blinding white light that poured in, shrieking with the sound of an anguished scream. In that moment of stark enlightenment, I saw the figure of my sister, standing at the threshold, her silhouette sharp against the raw brightness. "Help me," she cried, her voice a desperate blend of hope and despair. Her hand outstretched as if she could bridge the dark chasm between us. With a flicker of instinct, I surged forward, a pulse of adrenaline propelling me to claim her. But the shadows snapped into place, clenching me within their cold grasp, cruel laughter rippling through the air. "No!" I screamed, the darkness tightening like a vice. I strove to break free, to reach the light, but my limbs felt heavy as if the very essence of my being had become saturated in their bitter clutches. As I struggled, the faint glow of my sister flickered, and with it, the shadows howled in anticipation, ready to consume one of us. I was caught, hanging precariously between us, the light of salvation dimming, and with one final push, she screamed, "Choose! You must choose!" In that moment, clarity forced its way through the storm, a singular thought. I wanted to save her. And then, perhaps, the decision itself ripped its way through my resolve, a violent expulsion of emotion as I cried out, reaching deeper into the shadows. What awaited me on the other side would change everything. But as the darkness surged, dragging me under, her silhouette flickered once more, twisting and writhing, uncertainty flooding my mind. In an instant, the dark relinquished its hold, and I found myself in free fall, sucked into the abyss, screaming her name, and in that haunting silence, a voice whispered back, sending icy tendrils crawling along my spine. "You should never have chosen." In the void, panic seized me as the last remnants of light disappeared. Just then, I heard another voice, a different whisper, no longer my sister, but a chilling sound that chilled my very essence. It echoed, soft and sinister, "Welcome to the end of your story." The darkness enveloped me like a living shroud, suffocating and disorienting. My screams swallowed by the endless void. I couldn't tell up from down, my body weightless and listless, spiraling through a cold expanse devoid of hope. Panic surged as I tried to reconcile what had just happened, my sister's desperate plea, the ancient shadows, the figure that fed on our fears. Each thought warred for supremacy, clawing at my consciousness, demanding to be understood. The whispers twisted in the void, now a discordant symphony of countless souls, their wails vibrating against my skin. "You belong," they chanted. "You belong." An urgent echo that knotted my stomach, binding it with dread. And then, the rumbling began beneath me, the void shifting ominously, vibrating with a newfound energy that tugged at my essence. A deep growl resonated through the air, primal and potent, shaking the very fabric of reality around me. The darkness stirred, and I was suddenly aware of movement, a swell of energy surging from some unseen presence, wrapping around me like thick smoke. That I was not falling into nothingness. I was spiraling deeper into the maw of an otherworldly realm, a dark tapestry woven from nightmares. Panic surged, yet within it flickered a spark of illumination, a glimmer of recognition. My sister's face flickered behind my closed eyelids, a vision haunting yet grounding. Had she made a choice too? Or was she still lost, caught waiting in the light I had glimpsed? "Find us," a voice pleaded from the depths of the tumult. It was soft, innocent, yet draped heavily in sorrow, so familiar and achingly close. "Please find us," the voice carved through the oppressive gloom. And just as I concentrated on its source, I slammed into an invisible barrier, jarred back into awareness. The rush of sound ceased abruptly, plunging me into deafening silence. My heart thundered, quickening as I turned, inching forward in this vast expanse of shadows. Would I be able to find what I was seeking, or worse yet, unleash something far more sinister? The dim hum of energy charged the air, pulsating rhythmically, like a heartbeat thrumming beneath layers of darkness. As I stumbled forward, my fingers grazed something cool and smooth, a wall of some sort, the surface eerily warm beneath my palm. It pulsed with the same tempo as the whispers, strumming deep in my bones. I dragged my fingers along its contours as a shiver of awareness prickled against my back, the sensation of being watched clawing at my sanity. Then came a low, raspy chuckle from the shadows, sending a cascade of icy terror racing down my spine. "Brave one, do you seek the light, or is it darkness that calls to you?" I gasped, whirling around, the voice curling around me like slithering vines. "Show yourself," I demanded, trying to mask the quiver in my tone, the fear brewing just beneath the surface. Ah, the audacity! The voice lilted, smooth and mocking. "But how can you fight what you cannot see? Your sister is waiting for you, accepting her fate just as you must. Step closer. Let us see if you possess the courage to embrace the truth." Suddenly, within the unnerving murmur, a flicker of light ignited in the far distance, pulling at my heart like a long-lost memory. With each beat, the rhythmic pull became more insistent, more desperate. It was my sister's light, wasn't it? Driven by instinct, I surged forward, weaving through the darkness, chasing that beacon. The pulse quickened, the shadows encroaching with an insatiable thirst. Within the tightening grip of the void, the walls grew damp, slick with something foul. My fingers slid against the cold surface, and I recoiled as a seeping warmth moved beneath me, crawling up my legs with petrifying insistence. "Don't run," came the voice again, slithering like a serpent. "You won't escape what you truly are." I stumbled, a painful sensation catching me off guard as sharp claws raked against my skin, a melding of warmth and grip that tightened like iron. A chilling panic settled in my gut as I looked down. Twisted fingers reached upwards, pulling at me, merging with the dark. "Let go," I cried, wrenching myself away, desperation unleashing a wild surge of adrenaline that propelled me onward. Yet, the shadows laughed, mocking my struggle, their icy grip relentless. Just as I neared the illumination, my heart igniting with hope, darkness swelled with a ruthless vengeance. The barrier of shadows twisted violently, the figures within becoming clearer, the faces of the lost twisted in expressions of torment, mouthing silent screams that chilled me to my core. "Join us," they wailed in unison, a chorus of rage and despair defining their shimmering silhouettes. Then, the light before me flickered just for a moment, brought to a near dimness by the hunger that surrounded me. "No," I murmured, pushing against the tide of shadows swallowing the space. "I will not." I stretched out my hand, wanting to touch that flickering brightness and restore its strength, to bridge the dark chasm once more, but as I did, something clawed at my ankles, dragging me back with terrifying force. Suddenly, the whispers sharpened, and with a sickening clarity, I realized the gnashing teeth and soulless eyes belonged to the familiar, the lost remnants of the lives caught in this wretched expanse. They were tethered to the shadows, nourished by pain and feeding on the very essence of hope. "Choose," the unseen voice hissed again, deeper and more sinister, a command soaked in malice. "Give in." The light flickered once more, and my heart screamed, "I choose her." But before I could finish my thought, the world warped violently, and I felt myself ripped from the glimmering warmth of hope. I landed on the cold floor of the labyrinth I had known, but something was wrong, disturbingly wrong. I was alone, and silence enveloped me, thick and heavy as if the very shadow were watching. I jolted upright, breathless and trembling as I caught sight of the doorway. I saw her silhouette standing there, her face blank and devoid of emotion, no longer anchored by the light. "My dear brother," she whispered, her voice chilled with something indescribable. "You shouldn't have chosen." The haunting echoes of the endless void surged back, wrapping around me, clamping down, as realization punched through me with soul-crushing force. They were here, and this time I was the one they hungered for. The room deflated into oppressive silence, every breath I took steeped in dread. I felt their presence swirling around me, unseen entities, drawn forth by my desperate plea. My mind raced, replaying every moment, each choice, each click on that fateful Craigslist post. I had summoned more than just a chair. I had beckoned an entire realm of darkness, a lineage of lost souls bound to the shadows that cradled me now, waiting for me to become one of them. Run while you still can. A whisper threaded through the air, chilling my spine, but it was laced with something undeniably familiar. You're one of them now. I turned, every instinct screaming to flee, but the doorway now loomed impossibly distant. An insatiable void stretched between me and the flickering memory of light. The shadows writhed closer, each whispering my name like hesitant flames licking toward a woolen curtain, teasing the edge of combustion. Then it emerged from the depths, the very figure I had glimpsed on that horrifying night, the invisible buyer. Its form was an eerie amalgamation of familiarity and fear, a twisted visage cloaked in darkness, eyes glinting like obsidian stones, as if they could see the shreds of my soul still clinging to my identity. You thought you could escape it? You thought I came for the chair? It taunted, eyes narrowing, toothy grins stretching impossibly wide. No, I choked, stumbling further back, my mind racing through the maelstrom of memories. I didn't mean to know? It crooned, its voice low and sinister, seeping into my very essence. You sought the thrill, the terror. You wanted a story, a chance to uncover something deeper. You invited this darkness in. As if on cue, the shadows pulsed, a living tapestry weaving together moments of despair, victims, draped in sorrow, each a thread in a tale of horror that echoed through mine and danced around me, the very fabric entwining with my skin. The figure gestured toward the doorway, and suddenly it shifted behind it. I glimpsed the flicker of my sister, her expression a twisted reflection of my own rising horror. She has forgotten. The darkness laughed, and I felt the despair claw fiercely at my throat. The shadows shifted close enough to touch, wrapping around my limbs, their chill seeping into my marrow. You were meant to save her, but she has already lost, another story woven into despair. You will join her, or perhaps you will carve your own destiny among the damned. Choose. I grasped the words frantically as if they could provide some semblance of control. I don't want that. I want her back. My voice echoed within the churning void, desperation spilling out. I'll do anything, just please don't let her be part of this. Anything? Questioned, arching a brow. You underestimate how deep the dark has dug its roots into your psyche. With a wave of its skeletal hand, the shadows roared to life, swirling violently around me, their breaths hot against my skin. I gasped, once again feeling the panic creep within me, clawing desperately at the door of my sanity. Don't you see? Said voice thick with malice. She is part of this narrative now. You brought her here. You both yearned for the thrill of uncovering truth. And now, you must embrace the horror that awaits. The unseen buyer is but a reflection of your own longing for chaos. You think you can sever yourself from the darkness? No, dear one, it is within you. As my heart plummeted, realization dawned over me. Chills rippled down my spine as memories wrapped around me a suffocating shroud. A sinister laugh echoed, and shadows pulsed like a heartbeat, resonating with the fear that imprisoned me. I was not just a passerby. I had become a vessel for this malevolence, a keeper of its twisted stories. A price paid in more than coin. My very essence was part of the ink used to scribe these horrors. Then I saw her, my sister, emerging from the shadows, her form flickering like a dying candle. Don't let them take you, she cried, horror etched on her face as the shadows began engulfing her. Fight! But I was losing ground, trapped in the swirling dance of darkness that echoed despair and madness. You can't save her, the figure screamed, power lacing through its voice as it neared me. You can only choose. Embrace the truth, or be consumed. The air cracked with the tension of the moment, and pain seared my chest, a price I had to pay to save my sister, to save myself. I choose the darkness, I bellowed, my heart thundering, finality reverberating through every tortured fiber of my being. The shadows surged toward me, an ecstatic choir of liberation and anguish. The energy enveloped me, cool and warm, bleeding together like ink on pristine pages. And as the last flicker of light burst before my eyes, knowledge unfurled within me. I felt echoes of countless stories, entwined with mine, revealing fragments of truth, each threaded with unearthly power. But with the sacrifice came a searing knowledge, a chilling mantra repeated through time, a story never told but felt. You will never escape what you choose. And suddenly, I was thrust into clarity. Not free from darkness, but one with it invincible, eternal yet bound forever to these tales. In that moment I understood. It was not just my fate intertwined with my sister's. It was the essence of all who crossed the threshold of ideology lost, seeking wonder in the darkest corners. But horror lingered, and as the darkness coalesced around me, becoming my very being, I realized there was no escape from the bindings that ran deeper than roots in this chaotic tapestry woven through both shadows and light. Their waiting eyes whispered secrets in a language dampened by despair, a cruel reminder that I was never to possess the stories. I was to become the next. The weight of despair grew heavy in the silence, as shadows transformed into echoes of laughter and sorrow, the intertwining of lives lost to this eternal night. And from the heart of that dark tapestry, a last smirk twisted on the figure's lips. Welcome to your new home. The story will always continue. And as the darkness welcomed me, I knew I was never meant to just witness. I was to be written into the tales of fear that lingered in the depths of our collective nightmares. The chair remained, just a surface holding infinitely more, and I became one with the darkness, living in stories yet to be told, a vessel awaiting the next eager heart to open that door. Embrace us, they murmured as I fell into the abyss, a whisper echoing both dread and certainty. You'll all find your way back to the beginning.